All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is pre-recorded and is called All the World's a Stage. Thank you to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Project Director, to Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and to Crochet Starnes, Audio and Prompter. Last week, we discussed a new phase of the global currency reset. Early on the morning that we taped this segment, I retweeted, "At some point, we're all going to be on the same page in reality." My doctor, Charles Gant, is on the verge of publishing a medical textbook about the fact that we are transcendent beings. The hippocampus has a special role. Humanity possesses many hidden abilities. According to my source on the hippocampus, we are transcendent beings. In other words, we have many talents and capabilities that are going to stand us in good stead during the global currency reset. This is why we are ready for a new phase. The next step is for the people who understand what is really going on in the world and I to discuss how we are going to end the corruption in the world's money system. Enough people, that is, a critical mass of people, understand what I'm talking about so that we can take the next steps. We have been fighting this corruption for a long time. Don't be confused by my low profile whether I'm representing you and everybody else. We are all in this together. One of the things that I need to do now is to remind people about how important it is that I make sure that I don't get out ahead of everybody. This step is vital and is one of the reasons it may appear to people that our progress is slow. As we all gain confidence, things are going to move faster. I give proof for everything I tell you and answer your questions. The proof is in the archives to this series. Last week, YouTube removed the archives for about 6 hours before restoring them. The net effect was to alert an ever-widening audience about the corruption in the world's money and the global currency reset. It takes time for people to understand how we're all in this together. The YouTube crisis illustrated the way we are working together in the global currency reset. And what I tweeted, YouTube has deleted my channel, including the DCTV series on the banking cartel and my other videos, because I'm dancing the tango with all of humanity, including the world's military powers. This is not going to prevent us from winding down the banking cartel. And David Keesing said, "That just goes to show you we're speaking the truth and awakening the world to evil banking cartels." More people realize the important role for gold and silver and the need to move to local currencies. We're taking back our world by using the common law. Remaining active is key. The powers that were are scrambling with last-ditch efforts to start a banker's war in any number of theaters. This is if they are unsuccessful in their time-worn divide and conquer strategy. William Shakespeare said all the world's a stage in As You Like It, the second act and the seventh scene. And this is something that I had also tweeted based on a comment that somebody sent to me, asking me a question about why there were elections in Australia if I'm saying that there's an interregnum and no legitimate government. And the point that I made is that there has to be a precursor for there to be valid elections. And one of the precursors is that the people have a constitution in effect. And what you have in each and every country in the world is that the countries have been organized into companies. And you can't have elections in a situation like that. And that's the situation that we have in the United States. I made the point when there was a so-called electoral college that if there hadn't been a convened electoral college, that there was no way to vote Donald Trump into office. He's not the legitimate commander-in-chief, and whenever I say that, he doesn't defend himself, and the military powers, nobody contradicts me. So that tells you a lot, doesn't it? And you'll see a lot of other things. You just have to follow the logic, and that's actually quite difficult for many people to do because our thinking processes are being jammed, and some people are more sensitive to this. It's called electromagnetic and scalar weaponry, and some people are just not able to function at all. And if you talk to them, it just doesn't register. And I've experienced this up close, and it's something that you have to acknowledge. But one of the things that I've been noticing is that in the recent times, this jamming is breaking down. It's as if the resistance is stronger, even for the people who have been completely bamboozled and hypnotized. And I've noticed as well what happens and what has happened to me many times is that when I'm trying to write something, I have to take notes because if I don't, the thought that I had prepared to write disappears somehow. That's scalar weaponry. And what I've noticed is that that's breaking down. It used to be really quite difficult for me to write something. It would take 2 or 3 days of really working very detailed and hard to try to recall all of the logical steps that I wanted to set out. And now that's just not happening. So their weaponry is breaking down. I think probably what it is that enough people are joining in the resistance that they just they don't have the manpower or the capabilities or the capacity to keep it up. So they're probably running from one place to another, trying to keep everything under wraps. And as you can see, this is broken down now. So I think they're right now the begging cartel is trying to figure out what you noticed in the last comment was that they were trying to figure out whether we would tolerate a joint rule. And I have said, no, we would not. We would definitely not. At the very beginning, when I started getting involved in this whole matter, I had expected that what we would have is some kind of an accommodation where you would negotiate and you would assess the relative strength, and then there'd be some kind of a compromise. That was what I had originally thought. But then when it turned out that the U.S. Congress is actually entirely corrupt, and when I found out the extent of the corruption, and when I found out how long this corruption has continued in place, I realized no. If we tried to do that, we would just end up back exactly where we started, and probably in a worse situation, because the bankers would realize that there was nothing stopping them at all. They would just be completely incorrigible. Whereas now, I think what's happened is that they've recognized that it is inevitable. When so many people see the corruption for what it is, it can't remain in place. And the wealth is with us. The military powers, that's with us. The fact that there's a layer at the top trying to issue commands, that's not sustainable. Anybody knows that. And what you have with the power transition model that came from the United States National War College is you see that the countries that are depending on the United States military to defend them, that's Germany and Japan, they are not going to want a unilateral surrender of power when the Federal Reserve note goes out of commission. And that's actually where we are right now. The bankers don't have any way to keep this paper currency afloat, because the BRICS countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the G77, that's 134 developing countries, these countries have all said that they're not going to accept the United States dollar as the international reserve currency. They expect that gold is what the currency is going to be. So that it's only a matter of time that the Federal Reserve note goes out of commission. And actually what's holding the system in place now is the fact that we know that this gold is going to replace these currencies. That's what's holding the international financial system in place. So it's just what you would call a ministerial matter to exchange this paper currency for the gold. It's ultimately going to happen, and people are taking into account that that is what is going to happen. So the United States military is not going to surrender unilaterally, because Japan and Germany all, they don't want to surrender either. They are expecting that the United States is going to honor its treaties of defense. And the only way for the United States to be capable of doing that is if we have access to the monetary gold that belongs to the United States. And this monetary gold belongs to all of the countries in the world. And what's going to happen is that we're going to have a dollar for dollar, or currency for currency exchange. But in the beginning, there's going to have to be some kind of an understanding about what the relative values are of the currencies. And then what's going to happen is, as the countries themselves, their economies grow, and we expect that the developing countries are going to grow faster. That's the nature of economic growth. As that happens, there's going to be a peaceful transition in the world's power. So what the banking cartel had wanted to engineer was an abrupt shift through World War III, and that is not happening. And what I've also mentioned to people is that our pensions are not going to melt down with a crash of the markets. Now people understand that the markets are actually the relative power of the economies are going to be expressed in the precious metals that belong to these countries as we exchange the currencies. But this is not going to happen quickly, because we're going to have to mint the currencies and exchange the currencies. It's going to be an enormous bookkeeping problem. And also there are any number of questions that we're going to have to focus on and answer some of the questions. We've been talking about currencies, but we have not been talking about, for example, the regime for registering the ownership of land. As it currently stands, the banking cartel is claiming that it owns all the land on Earth, which is ridiculous. They've taken the titles to land from everybody, and that's not going to continue. We're going to give them back, but we're going to have to decide who's actually going to be registered as the landowners, and it's going to be a protracted process to determine this. Think about it, and one of the reasons for us to have the local currencies is because we want the decisions to be made from the grassroots level. And when all of the communities are working and participating in this decision making, you'll see that the decisions are not going to be made from the top down at all. They're going to be made on a participatory basis. And one of the things when I was talking about the hippocampus, what you'll find out, and it's not really just up to my own individual doctor, obviously. This is the facts of the matter of who we are and how we function. This is going to be factored in. And what we're going to learn is that each and every one of us has intrinsic value and has the capability of deciding for themselves what to do. So there's not going to be a political system where people are going to be subjugated. That's not going to happen. And we're going to have to arrange ourselves to reflect this fact. This is a fact. And that's really what the basis of the global currency reset is. It's making sure that the people who thought that they had the right to tell the rest of us what we should be doing, that's not happening. And our societies are going to have to be organized in a way that reflects this. And we're going to have to come up with decisions in the transition, how to get from here to there. And the reason why it has to be done peacefully, it's really, if you think about it, it can't be done any other way. And it also is not something that's going to happen just once. It's going to happen gradually as people try things out. And one of the issues, of course, is going to be whether we're going to have the countries all working on their own separate paths. And if you do that, then there are going to be reasons why people are going to want to go to one country over another. And all of these decisions are going to have to be taken on a trial basis. And this is an unprecedented exercise. No world has ever dismantled such intense corruption peacefully. And the only way we can do this is going to be by working together. And this discussion now is just the very beginning. And one of the things that's going to be happening is you'll discover as we go along, we're going to learn so much about ourselves, and we're going to regain so many abilities that things that we decide in the beginning, we may go back and revisit these things again. And what I have said is that especially in the beginning, everything is really on a trial basis. There's no decision that can't be rescinded. And that's also got to be understood, because if people thought that we were going to be affecting them, they would have to muscle their way in up front to try to register their dismay at the things that are being done wrong. And so if people know that, no, don't think that you've lost it for all time just because it started out where we made mistakes. And the information has got to be shared. The way I'm trying to do this now is by just putting a lot of information out, and it's not in any real, it's not organized in any way that somebody can go back and find out easily what has been decided. It's and that's also for good reason, because we are experimenting, we're learning, because this has never been done before. The reason that I'm here and doing this is because somebody has to do it. And I was just in the right place at the right time, and people understood that I was going to be trying very hard not to overextend my position. And that's what I've been doing. And what you can find out when you go back and see what it is that I've said and what it is that I've done. You'll find out that yes, this is not a grab for power by any stretch of the imagination. So you'll also find that I've been learning on the job, and this is as it should be, because since it's never been done before, I wouldn't have any idea of the way to tackle it. So, for example, at one point I asked a question whether we should precipitate some kind of a confrontation so that we could move faster. And the answer that I got back was that would be a mistake. What has to happen is people have got to see for themselves. Let the bankers give them enough rope to hang themselves. And that's if I look to see what distance we've come since I asked that question and got that answer. Yes, people have seen very dramatically what kinds of mistakes the banking cartel has made. And all you have to do is you have to see what happened with this YouTube business. They couldn't maintain that because people were uncomfortable with the information that they had shared being erased. It wasn't just that my tapes were being erased, because if you see any episode and the comment section afterwards, you'll see that this is something that's very much shared. And what was in my view, what happened in the last couple of weeks was the way the banking cartel was trying to dominate and slant everything that was said through its what we call sock puppets. These are people that are pretending to be somebody else and taking a position which is actually the banking cartel's position. And this backfires when people see what the banking cartel is trying to do and the way it's been lying through centuries, and then tries to slant and prevent people from learning how this information has been censored. People they've lost a lot of tolerance. So what the banking cartel does is it really makes it much harder for itself. And this is, so when people ask, well, how much longer is it going to take? it's going to take just as long as for the banking cartel to understand that it's been revealing itself to people, and people don't like what they see in the banking cartel. Who would want to be preyed off of and to have to support somebody when that person isn't entitled to be supported? Nobody wants to be a chump. That's what a chump is. Nobody wants to be a chump, and people have gotten a very good picture of what it is that the banking cartel has been doing, and they don't want that to continue. And every time the banking cartel tries to prolong this, it just makes it harder for them, because people are going to be less and less tolerant as time goes on. One of the things that I had said a couple of years ago was that if the banking cartel wants to hold on when it really should have allowed us to transition, that people are going to hold that against them. Let me add that we're in the middle of an historic transition. One of the unknown but very positive factors is the fact that we are transcendent beings. I understand that many of us are trapped in a state of being that doesn't allow us to realize that potential. We're going to learn and teach each other. As you all must appreciate by now, I'm also learning on the job, and I'm learning from you. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.